Fire Emblem Fates. Oh man, Fire Emblem Fates was my first entry into the Fire Emblem series as a whole, and it became a gateway for me to play other games in the franchise, such as the very game that saved the entire franchise, known as Fire Emblem Awakening, as well as the hugely popular Fire Emblem Three Houses. Now, Fire Emblem was a series that I definitely had some interest in ever since I played Super Smash Bros. Brawl, and I had to feast my eyes on Ike and Marth. Ike was actually my main in Brawl because he had that just hard-hitting impact on his moves I liked so much, and I constantly spammed his moves against my brother, and it was just a lovely time. But anyway, the problem for me about the series at the time was that there weren't many ways for me to access the games physically, and I had to resort to emulation, and then I never actually get to play any of the older games, so I had other things on my plate. I wanted to play games like Genealogy or the Holy War, but never got a chance to do that, so, kind of just missed on Genealogy. I might play that game someday, but anyway, so it was around 2016 where the newest set of games known as Fire Emblem Fates Birthright and Fire Emblem Fates Conquest started to appear on TV commercials. And I was like, damn, I've never seen a Fire Emblem commercial before on TV. And the premise that they were showing off did pique my interest. You were the main character, Corrin, who is forcibly dragged into a conflict between two warring nations, your birthplace of Hoshido, or the family that raised you in the form of Noir, or Nor. I always call it Noir, but it's pronounced Nor, but I always pronounce it Noir. I just easier to say. But anyway, Nor. And I thought the premise along with the badass character designs, would be the perfect start for me to get into the series. Then again, when you really think about it, you're not really choosing a side. They made a whole marketing campaign. It's like, oh, you can choose your family, choose your fate, and all that junk like that. But like, you're not really making a choice per se, because if you buy Fire Emblem Conquest, you're stuck playing Conquest. And you have to shell out $20 if you want to play Birthright and 20 more bucks for Revelations. So you're not really making a choice, because if I pay $40 to buy Conquest, I'm forced to play Conquest. There is no choice in the matter. I guess the choice is on the outside, like before you buy the game, But like when they give you the option in-game to choose a side, if you haven't bought the other games, you can't make the choice. And that's $80. You have to pay $40 for the games and $20 for the digital versions. And Revelations is digital only, it's DLC only. But yeah, Nintendo, you ain't fooling nobody. That's probably something I didn't realize until like I started making this video. I was like, oh yeah, you're not really choosing anything. You're just, unless you have all three versions, yeah. And then I remember that special edition that came out with all three on a single cartridge. Damn it, I wish I had that. But anyway, so after going to GameStop and copying Pokemon Sun, because that's around, I think Pokemon Sun has been out for a while at that point, so I bought that. I had enough cash to purchase one of the Fate games. Now, I did a research before, and I did learn about the permadeath feature that exists in all Fire Emblem games, where you would lose your units forever if they died. And I was told that Birthright was the easier of the two games, so I bought Birthright. So when playing Birthright, I had a really fun time on the gameplay side of things. I was already experienced with some strategy RPGs, so learning Fire Emblem Fates wasn't too hard for me. I enjoyed Birthright's gameplay so much that I bought Conquest and then Revelations a while later. And keep in mind, I hadn't even beat Birthright yet, and this was a huge moment of me jumping the gun. I don't know why I decided to buy all three games, considering the fact that I hadn't beat one of them yet at that point, so anyway, let's move on from that. Anyway, now I enjoyed all three Fates games for their music, story, and presentation, and I will always thank this particular entry in the Fire Emblem series for at least getting me in to the franchise. But Fire Emblem Fates is one of the most flawed games I have ever played, even outside of Fire Emblem. I've only played like 3 Fire Emblem games, but still, like, if you want to count, let's say 5, because technically all 3 Fates games are their own games, essentially. So let's say I played 5 Fire Emblem games. But the two biggest issues with Fates are the characters and the overall plot. Now, this video isn't some kind of deep dive on these issues, but these are some things I just wanted to point out. So I think it's easier to start with the characters, and yeah, the characters have cool designs and they're interesting on paper. But they really don't have much going on outside of that, in my personal opinion. I think the idea of Hoshido versus the Nor conflict and having to choose between the two sides along having a middle ground adventure in terms of Revelations is a good idea. But all these 3 games fail to live up that potential. Now, I didn't find any of the characters particularly interesting, and even after filling with Fates recently, I still don't think too much of them. And their opinions got slightly better from the last time I played it, but like, they're still kind of just like, eh. And I don't think too much of the characters from Fates, and Fates has a huge-ass roster. I mean, you have Hoshido, you have all the characters from Nor, you have all the children units, you have other units you could just find wherever else, like Mozu, stuff like that. But I think the one huge problem with Fates is that there's too many characters with not much to do with them. Now, I get the idea they were trying to, get all these characters together and be like, oh man, this would be great, you have like a huge adventure, but like, it's just too many. And I think out of all the characters, like, the one I clung to the most was Mozu, right? Because A, she is precious as hell, and B, she is freaking busted when you can get her out in the field. Like, Mozu was one of my favorite units because of how strong she was. Loved her as a unit. But anyway, you get severely missed opportunities with characters such as Queen Makoto, who gets killed mega early in the game, and we don't know dick about her, but the game expects you to care, and that it has one of those factors that come in the decision when you either choose Hoshido, Noir, or neither of them. And I feel like, Queen Makoto could have had way more screen time. You only see her for like a little bit, then she dies, and we're expected to go care when Korin goes dragon mode, that kind of shit. Like, I'm like, I feel like she could have been like at least a unit for like maybe 2 maps and then die. I would have been like at least care if I could have used her in combat. I mean, imagine trying to pull that same shit off with what's her face, Rhea and Fire Emblem Three Houses. That wouldn't have worked at all. People wouldn't have gave a shit about her. You also got mega bland and generic as hell villains such as Garen. Garen could have been way better than he was, but he's just like, you look at, like, I get the idea of like Nor being like, this the evil side, quote unquote, right? But when you look at the kids and everything else going around Nor, it's not really evil, right? But Garen is completely evil. No way of hiding that. He's completely evil. 0 layers to the guy. He's just evil, right? And plus, Garen killed Queen Makoto, so like, what the shit? You know what I mean? Like, how is that supposed to be how's that supposed to be when we go on the side? It's like, wow, Garen, it's pure evil. He just killed this woman, and we're Korin, we're not evil, we seem morally upright, so why would we join Nor if we clearly know our father's insane, There's also characters like Perry, who's just weird. She's clearly crazy and a goddamn serial killer that Nor just keeps around and just let her do whatever. Like, I guess she's super skilled, but like seriously though? Seriously? And yeah, we gotta talk about Camilla. Look, I like Camilla, even though I understand why people don't like her. She's practically the face of Fates at this point. Whenever you think of Fates, Camilla is probably the first person you think of. I like her, even though there's not much to her. Big sister archetype that will go crazy if anything happens to the main character. I can respect that. I am not going to comment on this any further before this video becomes something else entirely.
It's just that it's so hot.
Missy, if you think that is gonna... Owie, wowie! Baby wants mommy! Make it dirty!
Now, I personally feel as if the Birthright characters kind of suffer for being the least interesting out of the 2 factions. Honestly, I personally believe that Conquest has a more, the better characters, but, that's a different thing. But yeah, I feel like Birthright kind of suffers for being the least interesting out of the 2. Despite me liking Birthright more as a game because it was my first one, it isn't crazy challenging like Conquest is. Now, there's nothing wrong with Conquest being super challenging because that was the idea for it. It's like, oh yeah, Birthright is supposed to be more for like the easier people who want to get in, and Conquest for hardcore veterans who really like Fire Emblem. And I get that. And I'll say it took me a lot of work to get through Conquest. Conquest is not an easy game, but don't get me wrong, Conquest had a lot of more variety in the map design than Birthright ever did. Like, the map design and scenarios in Conquest are so awesome that they're still good to this day, even after all these other Fire Emblem games came out. You got Chapter 15 with the clones, the Cherry Blossom Forest in Chapter 24, the Stresso Matters at Chapter 10, that even big fans told me that Chapter 10 for Conquest stresses the hell out of them. Like, there are some cheap as hell maps, though. Like, Conquest does have that, too. And don't even get me started. And personally, the inability to grind makes it hard for me to come back to Conquest. But that's just my dumb baby casual mode brain on this. I personally like the ability to grind at least some of my units off, so I want to get thrown into the next one, and they're like, oh no. Like, they could have, like, they did great with Fire Emblem 3 Houses where they put like a penalty on how long you can grind, how long you can spend outside of like, like big map stuff, like per day. So that's one thing I like. But anyway, back to the characters on the Hoshido side. I personally believe that, on the Hoshido side, I personally believe that characters like Kagero, Hinoka, and hell, even one of the most badass Fire Emblem characters I've ever seen in the form of Reina,
Mommy,
would have been more interesting if they did more what they did, and they just did. Especially Reina. I think like Reina was one of those characters you could have felt like she has some crazy shit going on in her past, and like you get that, but you don't get more of her, and that's kind of a shame. You feel like, you know, being the older character and, like, you know, being the more seasoned warrior, we would have seen more of her somehow, but I think like Fire Emblem in general just doesn't do shit with Rhea, and that pisses me off. I like her. Anyway, I found the Nor side to have the cooler and at least more interesting lineup. Revelations, like the whole Vala shit. But speaking of Revelations also sound good on paper, with both Hoshido and Nor settling their differences and coming together to fight back their biggest threat in the form of the Kingdom of Vala. Now, I remember this whole dumb thing where you couldn't talk about Vala outside of Vala, or you just kind of just die. And like, I was like, wow, we can't speak of Vala outside of Vala, or we're just die. So that's why this whole third side just came in out of nowhere. This feels like some kind of expanded story DLC thing. Because like these games were like created with like from the basis that there were going to be 3 of these, but we don't know shit about Vala until we get to Revelations, right? I feel like it would make more sense to hint at Vala like a lot more in Birthright and Conquest and led up to Revelations, but instead, like, if Revelations with the whole Vala thing, it feels like it just came out of nowhere. You know what I mean? Like, I get it, it's like another route, but like, I just feel like it came out of nowhere, whatever. Also, with Revelation, while it's cool to have all the families, along with the other unaffiliated units, just too many characters to manage. There's so many characters and like fates from the beginning. I'm like, oh my god. So when you get them all together, it's like, damn, I gotta be careful and manage everyone like super well, like what characters I'm going to use for the rest of this run, because obviously you have to level the rest of them up. So like, it's too many characters, a lot. I don't know how many units there are. I think I counted like 40 to 50 when I played Revelations last, but man, it's a lot of units. But anyway, even so, after all my complaining and whining, I really liked for what I played from Fates on the gameplay level. I personally felt that I did jump the gun and bought all 3 Fates games because I enjoyed the first game so much without even beating it at that point. So yeah, that wasn't the best financial decision I could have taken. And yeah, $80 for the whole experience at least gave me 3 games that had amazing gameplay, honestly. I feel like, you know, at least they're all 3 separate games in their own way. Yeah, the stories aren't very good, but the gameplay is solid, man. The gameplay is solid. The unit composition is pretty solid. You got a good amount of customization with your units. So I feel like $80 to get all of them was actually pretty worth it, even though everything else around the gameplay fell flat. But honestly, without Fates, I wouldn't have played Fire Emblem Awakening, which is a damn good game, and I can see why this one game single-handedly saved the entire franchise from death. And without Fates being that gateway into the series for me, I wouldn't have bought and played Fire Emblem Three Houses, which I have dumped 80+ hours into so far, and yet I still have one more route left in the game to clear as of this recording, because Three Houses is just that damn fun. Fates could have been far better, to be honest. It could have been way better in the story department. And yeah, I did see the development on Fates when it was coming out. And yeah, I definitely saw some, like, read some articles and stuff like that. They did have, they tried to do way too much, too much, too fast. They tried to do way too much. I honestly feel like Fates could have been far better if they just worked on one game at a time, you know? Or just not try to do all 3 at once. Or better, just make one giant Fates game, but not like having to force stuff like Conquest and Revelations be its own thing. Like, Fates could have had a far better story and everything been more concise if it just wasn't separated like that. I think that's one of the things that hurt Fates the most. Like, you know, these games feel like they're incomplete, and even when all together, they're still incomplete. If that makes sense. I don't know how that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense the same way, but like, they all feel separate, and yet when you combine them all together and get the full story, they still don't feel, you know, they all still feel separate. But anyway, and I definitely feel like smashing it all in one game could have done better. You see how Three Houses worked with it, where they had like the multiple routes, the 3 routes, and the hidden 4th route, but that doesn't really count in my opinion. Like, the 3 routes, they smashed all that into one video game, and all 3 routes feel right. You know, they all feel right, they all feel like better, and you have to tell Three Houses was their way of learning from their faults of Fates. Plus, they wrote Three Houses much more confidently than Fates, but still, I liked Fates from a gameplay standpoint, and without it, I wouldn't be into Fire Emblem today, so I gotta thank the series for that. So, yeah, without further ado, I'll see y'all next time. Peace out, everyone, and I hope all you guys have a great day. I am out.